So, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome founder and CEO of Salt and Pepper Media, Dr. Paul Fitzgerald. So, welcome, Paul.
Thanks so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate you taking the time today to do it, and it's an honor.
Thank you so much. So, Paul, I wanted to congratulate you on all your achievements. So, can you share with us how your entrepreneurial journey started and what made you get into journalism and PR?
Sure, yeah. Of course, over the years, I've been deeply into music. I played trumpet in a huge marching band that traveled the world, Canada, USA, Europe. I played in a lot of rock bands. I did a lot of recording, and I was also, of course, very creative. And of course, also big into writing. So those three things combined allowed me to sort of, figure out my path. I've always been a storyteller, whether it's writing a song, whether that's, writing a book, writing a story. I always had those passions in me. And with that, I decided to go to university, college, and it turns out that the institution I went to, St. Mary's University, they hired me as a reporter.
Oh, wow.
They created a position because I was editor of the student newspaper, one of Canada's oldest student newspapers, that is. I was editor for 3 of my 4 years while taking a full course load. It was a big responsibility, a big staff, a lot of optics, logistics, moving parts, but I loved it. And the university saw my passion. Funny, they gave me when I they first hired me, they gave me the science portfolio to
Oh,
cover
wow.
science research. And believe it or not, in all fairness, I don't think I had trouble with math and science. But they said, and I told them that I said, like, I'm not a scientist, and they said, no, no, no. You're perfect for this job because you can travel the world, you can write press releases, you can write stories, because you're able to communicate it in a way that people will understand it because you're not a scientist. So
Yes,
sure
true. So
enough,
it's more
yeah,
relatable to the people reading or
right,
publications. Yeah.
right. So I did that for quite a while with the university for almost 10 years. And I went to the Gambia, I went to Brussels, I went to London, I've been to Spain, the US, across Canada, all relating to science research. And then I evolved into economics and different things like that. And a lot of my stories are getting funneled into the Globe and Mail, the Daily Sun in London, you name it, the Associated Press. And
Wow.
then finally, believe it or not, there was really nowhere for me to move up. I had been there almost 10 years at the university, and it was a really good experience. I did my master's there as well in journalism. And I met a dentist through a friend, believe it or not, and he had invented a mouth guard that aligned your jaw. It's proven that when your jaw is aligned, a lot of us have an overbite, but it's proven when your jaw is properly aligned, your strength, balance, flexibility, range of motion greatly improves for most people.
Amazing.
Right now, you're not going to be a Shaq O'Neal or a Beckham right off the hopper, but you'll see some improvement with better posture, better better rapport with your body. So he had a network of dentists, almost 200, and he had approached me, and I started doing some press work for him. And he approached me and said, "We need a publicist. You're like the perfect guy. You've got that pizzazz. You can travel. You can write. You're really good with people." So sure enough, I started, and then he said, "Well, do you want to do this full time? Like, do you want to have your own business and take care of all our dentists?" And the rest was history. I jumped without a parachute. I opened up Salt and Pepper
Wow.
Media, and since then, there's been no looking back. And that was my entry into working with Manny Ramirez, Shaq O'Neal. We fitted all these different athletes with the mouthpiece, the mouth guard, and I was working with everybody. Morning shows in San Diego, Los Angeles, the New York Times, the LA Times, the Seattle Post, you name it. The list could go on. So that's where I got my start. But I guess going back to everything, my music, my writing, my creativity, my openness got me to that point where I decided that, okay, I am an entrepreneur. I've been independent. I can work independently. And that's where I got my start.
Yeah, which is so much better, right? So,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
Journalism has changed so much over the years with social media and technology. How has this influenced the way we tell stories now, that are, on other media outlets and the rise of podcasts and non-traditional platforms? And how has this impacted the way in which you, as a journalist and PR specialist, pivot and stay relevant and authentic within the work that you do?
Well, I think you used the right word there, Karen. Authentic.
Yes.
There was back in a time, as you know, there was just newspapers, radio, and TV. Your local, your city could have had three or four newspapers. In some cases, you'd have the morning edition, the afternoon, and the night edition, and then you'd have, news at noon and news at 6, and then 10 and then 11. So I think we've entered this period where people are a lot more. They want to see realness. They don't
Yes,
want to see the suit and
absolutely.
tie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
People
think there's
are
a
not
lot.
interested in, airy fairy or delusional, what, like,
Right.
even, things that aren't really necessarily relatable or attainable to the average, or I say average, but, we're not talking about like billionaires, but more relatable stories. So 100%.
Ab Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, since the internet came along, there was a day, um, excuse me, there was a day where you always had to wear a suit to work. You always had to wear a suit and tie,
Mm,
or blazer if you're, a woman. You always had to have that look, that corporate look. And I think a lot changed where the t-shirts and jeans came into the workplace, the
mm,
sweaters,
mm,
relaxed look. And I think over time, I think as much as this technology is bombarding us, and I think a lot of people get scared of technology. I remember there was a time I remember when I was really little, the topic of computers came out that they're going to ruin the world. They're going to take all these jobs away. Well, really, computers, in fact, created more jobs than the aviation, transportation industries, sports combined. So it's phenomenal to see this progress. And it's not only that, it's how we get information now. You know, um,
yes.
Right? So there was back in the day where you had to wait till the next morning to find out what happened the day before, where everything now is instant. But I think with the instant, people want to see real. And I think there was a period when, the internet came out and all these, the websites used to be super long. And I think people now, we've passed all that point where people want video. They want to hear about someone's mental health story. They want to hear about struggles. They want to hear about how to overcome. They
Mm.
want to hear real, right? And
Absolutely.
I
And
think,
it also helps those people because, one story shared could be heard by somebody that's been in a similar or going through a difficult time or whatever, or wanting to, start their own business or become an entrepreneur. So I think that there's a lot of stories besides, the same names that we hear all the time, and,
yeah,
makes it way more relatable to people. So
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And now you can go many different places to find that information, or you could
absolutely.
have five podcasts you like, you could have three newspapers you like, but there's more. You can move around a lot quickly to get more versions of a story, which I also like.
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
the only downside is that there is a lot of noise out there. And to stand out up from that noise is, again, keeping it real, knowing how to market, knowing when to post, and trying not to talk about yourself too much, but have others talking about you.
Yes, exactly. So, with that, do you still believe big media outlets carry the same weight and credibility? And how do you see this changing? Because I think that, and I don't want to get too much into politics but I
Yeah,
do think that there has been a lot of mistrust due to a lot of, so-called misinformation or propaganda or whatever you want to call it. So I'm just curious your take on that. Do you think that they still carry the same weight?
I don't. I don't at all. In
Yeah.
fact, and I think people are starting to, because of all the podcasts, because of all these different news websites, independent websites, I think people now are reading more than they ever have before.
Yes.
Might not be lengthy like back in the old days when you picked up the Washington Post or the London Times. It was like a phone book, and you take a week to read.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think now is that when you hear something, even if you see it on X or Facebook or whatever, I think a lot of people now will question the source. Wait, let me look more into that. Is that real? I think too is that we've seen a rise in the independent media. In fact, Rogers recently did in Toronto and across Canada. They had did a big layoff, as did Bell. And someone had approached me and I wrote a column on this actually, is that, oh my God, this is doom and gloom. I said, no, it's not doom and gloom. And the person said, why? I said, well, first of all, a lot of these people, reporters who lost their jobs, are going to go back to their home communities, right? They're
Mm.
not going to be in Toronto anymore, and they're going to create their own community newspaper.
Absolutely.
Right? So what's happening now is that yes, I think a lot of them, yes, I think the mainstream media is losing it's has lost a lot of its credibility because they rely a lot on sourcing,
Mm,
from the
mm,
courts, from the police, from the government, and and really that's their job. They're reporting on their sources and what's happening at press conferences and things like that. And there still are some media that challenge the status quo, like the
mm,
National Post is
mm,
one,
mm.
the Daily Mirror, the Daily Sun, the New York Post. But in saying that, I think is the credibility on the big mass media side is being questioned, but at the same time, there's a rise in independence of citizen journalists, whether it be
Absolutely.
video, a
Yeah.
combination of video and writing. And I think so. I think the trend now is that to answer your question, that yes, but at the same time, there's independent journalists, professional and just ordinary people that want to tell news stories who are providing their opinion, their insight, which is good. I think that's good. And that's all about free speech.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when there's so much information and news coming at us, from all directions, what do you do to stay relevant and sustain such a long career? Like, what are some of the things that you kind of stand out from even competitors, if you want to call it that?
Sure, sure, sure. Well, there's apps. My company now builds apps. We do podcasts. We do videos. We do content writing. Everything from how-tos to informative blogs to product announcements, press releases. And that's not only just for the mainstream media now. Funny again, my press release list extends to mom, pa blogs, everything,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So to stay relevant, to stay ahead is, tapping into all these different areas because now, the media used to be just like a small pie, like I guess if you will, or it was a
Yeah.
pie with not a lot of slices in it.
Mm.
Now it's media is, oh, I've got an app that can deliver you news. Oh, we've got a podcast, and then you're working with these different platforms, if you will, to share the same story. So there's even more to share, and you've got to stay ahead and know who the influencers are, know what the trends are to stay ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would you say have been some of your biggest lessons within your career? And you probably had multiple, but what is one that really stands out for you?
The biggest lesson I've learned is that everyone has a shelf life. And if you're complacent,
Yes.
you're done. You're done.
Yeah.
And I've had the gravy train. There's been some years where I've made phenomenal money, phenomenal,
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal. And there's been years where I wondered what happened to me. Am I
Yeah,
washed up? Am I
absolutely.
done? Right? And that happens to rock bands. That can happen to authors. You look at Alice Cooper. Up,
Mm,
down, up, down, up, down. You have to get used to the peaks and valleys, and you have to reinvent, and
mm,
you have to be really honest with yourself. I mean, there's a million people doing what I'm doing.
mm.
But I know that as long as I'm genuine, I'm honest, and I reinvent, and I care, I'm doing what I love, I'll always survive.
Absolutely. So, as a thought leader, columnist, sorry, for some of the very big publications like Rolling Stone, Entrepreneur, USA Today, Toronto Sun, and so many more, um, in the US, can you share with us how you achieved that and where your passion for journalism came from?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think over the years, ever since, I was a student in journalism, right up to, I was a reporter at a university, and then as an entrepreneur, I've always been networking, and giving it my all. I think people, when they meet me, they know my passion. I absolutely love what I do. I love media. I love journalism. I eat, sleep, and breathe it.
Yes.
And I think it's a networking, for example, going to the Consumer Electronics Show, I make sure I spend time with my colleagues there, and my colleagues, will be writing, say, for The Economist or Entrepreneur, and then they're working with Rolling Stone, and it's like, hey, Paul, meet this person. Hey, Paul, meet that person.
Mm.
And so I think, you know, the passion networking has allowed me into these spaces.
Yes.
I'm credible, I'm honest, and I love telling stories. I love helping women, Black entrepreneurs, everyone who has a startup or technology or innovation or something that's new, reach others in our world and help make an impact. And that goes back to, I guess, in all, how did I, get to where I am now? And that goes back to music, playing guitar, playing trumpet, writing songs, going to the studio. I always wanted to write a song that, would have an impact on someone's life, as much as I like the song I was writing, or songs, if you will, or an album, I wanted that to have an impact on society, on
Yes,
people's lives.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that leads me to the next question of what is some of your biggest achievements in your career? And again, you've probably had multiple, but what really stands out for you?
Well, getting published now on rollingstone.com is a huge one through the Rolling Stone Culture Council. That's a
Amazing.
thought leadership section of rollingstone.com. It's a true honor. I've won lots of awards, but more importantly, I think the biggest achievement is realizing my strengths and weaknesses and improving on them.
Yes.
I could go on and on about, like, obviously entrepreneur, the son, but I think I've the biggest achievement I've done, and only because I haven't been institutionalized, and don't take that the wrong way, is
No,
that,
absolutely.
right? I haven't been the guy, I haven't been that person that's just, jumped into a relationship, got married, unloaded truck somewhere, or took that office job. I think doing what I'm doing now, or what I've been doing for, the past while, I've learned about other people, I've learned more about myself, and I've improved. And I don't
Yes,
think I would ever do that if I had just been status quo,
exactly. Well, I
right?
mean, that's the whole thing is, it forces you to kind of think out of the box and
Right. And I'm
do things
accountable for my
differently.
actions.
Yes.
Right. And you take that office job, and sure, you are accountable to a degree, but at the same time, there's a company name on your check. There's a company name on the front of the building, if you will.
Mm.
And now it's Paul Fitzgerald. And as much as it's salt and pepper, it's still Paul. And I'm responsible, to say what I'm going to do. I would have to say getting to this point has been my biggest achievement.
That's amazing.
Mm.
So I want to kind of expand upon, the technology side of things. So
Mm.
AI is expanding at such a rapid rate, which is
Mhm.
quite scary for many people. So how do you see this as a tool impacting journalism and media in general? And what do you do differently, or how are you adapting within the space?
Yeah, it's a hot topic. You just hit a hot
Yes.
topic button. And I guess just to bounce back, there was years ago where people thought computers were going to ruin every job in the world.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so I think AI is going to create a lot of jobs,
Mm.
and I don't think AI is going to do really the job of journalism as we know it.
No, it isn't.
Never will,
Definitely not.
right? Yeah, you're
Because
always going to.
even things like, sorry to interject, but even
No,
things like, people who have tried to submit, utilizing ChatGPT, the journalists can immediately pick up on it that are
yes,
publishing the article, and they're like, we can't use this because it's not authentically written by the person or by the PR person or whoever's navigating that. So I
right.
100% agree with you on that.
Yeah. So I think it's a tool that can help it can help for ideas. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there was back in a day where I'd run and look at a book to get an idea from one of my favorite authors like Hunter S. Thompson. Um, but at the same time, I think it's going to help package news. I think it's also going to help in delivering news
Mm.
to what people are with algorithms. So I
Yes.
think it's going to change in terms of delivery, where you're going to write a story and then it can help create a video. It can help, it can help do a lot of things digitally.
Mm.
Um, but at the same time, I said to somebody who's in journalism a little while ago, we were talking on the phone, And he said, "Oh my God, AI, AI, AI." I said, go create your own AI platform then.
Mm,
Create something with AI. There's so many opportunities right now, and it
mm,
doesn't matter what industry you're in.
mm,
AI is everywhere. Embrace it. And as much as it's scary, let's remember this is that ever since the internet evolved to where it's at now, libraries are expanding, but libraries are expanding with books.
mm.
And what else has made a huge comeback? Vinyl.
Yes.
Massive comeback. So I think people, no matter what, want the real. Now, with AI, yeah, sure, my lights go on in the morning when it knows I'm gonna wake up. The coffee can go on from my bed with a click of a button, or it just does it for me because it knows at 7:15 Paul's up and he likes his coffee black with such and such a brand. And then the news and algorithms. But I think in all, to use it, embrace it, um, allow it to help with your social media. There's lots of platforms out there. Now, as much as there's lots of platforms out there, it is still limited. A lot of these platforms have the same templates, the same working tools, if you will, for animation and things like that. That will grow, but at the
Yes.
same time, you're still going to need an editor. You're still going to need a writer. You're still going to have clients still going to have a brand. They're still going to have a product, and people still have to tell the story and make things happen. Not a robot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
So
that's my take.
no, that's amazing. So PR and publicity is such an important part of branding and marketing, as well as the power of storytelling. So can you share with the audience why traditional PR and journalism is so important, how it helps with and professional branding, and how it adds additional credibility, and why this content is so important? I know that's a lot.
No, yeah, no, no, and it's a great question. I think, in all PR, traditional PR and traditional journalism, they're merging into one world now, and they have for quite a while.
Yes.
And I think because of that, I think a lot of people, and this is the same when TV before computers, and I've read this, you looked at brands like Pepsi and Coca-Cola, they started creating ads. With a lot of realness to it.
Yes.
And we're at that point now as well. We had that big boom and the internet came out and everything came out. And I think people, again, going back to our earlier conversation, is that, it's like that one commercial, that little boy somewhere in Mexico who steps on a bunch of Coca-Cola cans to get a Pepsi out of the machine, where the struggle's real, innovation, you'll find a way to get that pop. You'll like where it became, there's, the boy is just like a soccer player, a little football player, somewhere in, with palm trees. However, the
Yeah,
story, the
absolutely.
story's got more real and real. And I think now is that people, when they hear about a brand, they want to hear the realism behind it. They want to hear what the company's doing on the environmental front, the culture front, diversity, everything, and I think every product can speak to different areas of our society. And I know the word society is a big word, but
Mm.
it can speak to politics, it can speak to realism, it can speak to history, it can speak to culture, it can speak to innovation. And if you're tapping into those different areas by using the traditional methods of public relations and news media journalism, that is, you'll be a hit.
Absolutely. So you've worked with on many major news and promotional campaigns with notable celebrities. So can you share with us more about this and how you managed to achieve this and how did this change the trajectory of your career, if it did change it?
It did. It really did. Through my journalism journey and public relations journey, um, case in point, I was working for a big, very big North American home lifestyle magazine, and I started as a publicist. And I got deeply rooted into the magazine with its operations, not just on the publicity front, putting out press releases, announcing covers. Is that again? I think, when you work with me, you see my passion right away, and the publisher saw my passion right away, and
Mm.
he's like, "Boy, I read one of your pieces in the Sun." He goes, "You'd be a really good writer as well for the magazine. Would you mind doing both?" Sure enough, I did it. And then all of a sudden, I managed to get Donny Osmond for a cover story. on his new furniture line, and they flew me down.
Wow.
Yeah, I interviewed Donny Osmond, and during that, with all the connections, I met Lennox Lewis. He had an event we hosted in Toronto with the Muhammad Ali 50th anniversary fight against George Chavella, and I met Lennox Lewis through George Chavella. And then I mean everyone from Larry Flint to Olivia Newton-John. I started meeting more and more magazines were calling me to say, "Hey, can you fly here? You know, we trust you. You're really good at what you do. You're really good at interviewing. You're really good with people. Do you want the gig?" So I started doing that for a period of time, which I still do. So in other words, how did I get there? Networking,
Mm.
hard work, innovation, honesty, creativity, and just being Paul.
Yeah,
What you
absolutely.
get. I'm real, you know?
What you see is what you get, and that's
Yeah,
key.
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
So that leads me to the two final points. What are the three key pieces of advice you would give to entrepreneurs or startups that you mentor? And what legacy would you like to leave, or how would you like to be remembered?
The first one is stop worrying what people think.
Yes.
One thing startups and this could be at any age, and I don't want to say you could be in your 20s or 30s, and you could be 70 with a startup, and you're all worried
Yes.
about how you're going to look and what it means. Just be yourself. You
Yes.
know, there's an audience, right?
Yes.
You know, be yourself, be genuine, be honest,
Mm.
and give it your all. That's but the biggest piece of advice is keep it real and don't worry about what other people think when it comes to, should I post that? Does this logo look good or whatever?
Mm.
Splash it out there, get some feedback, be humble,
Mm.
you know, and in terms of me leaving my legacy, I think I want to help people achieve their goals. In fact, really quickly is that every month I will do one or two projects without charging someone. I'll find a client or a startup or a person doing something really innovative, and I'll help them get to that next level. So helping people and making a difference in their lives holistically, and I mean that,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I
So
mean that,
important.
yeah, yeah, and that's a legacy I'd like to leave behind is that he made an impact because he helped people. I don't want to be that person where, well, he owned a mansion, he had a Ferrari, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
I don't have far to
It's
fall.
so boring anyway.
Well, yeah, and I want to be able to get on an airplane when I want and work from wherever I want,
Mm.
and and do this, and I do this in different parts of even the world for that matter, Zurich, London, Spain, the US, Canada, and I'm meeting a lot of people, having a hell of a lot of fun along the way, and in all, Paul helped people. Paul didn't take someone's money.
Yeah, exactly, which is amazing.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Paul. It's been amazing. So, if
Thank
people would
you.
like to connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
Instagram, Salt and Pepper Media. Salt and Pepper, if you just www.saltandpepper, Salt and Pepper Media Inc. Inc.com. All our social channels are on our website. And you can reach me through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. We've got it all set up. We have it all going on.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Paul, and hopefully we can have you back in the future to see where you are in your journey.
I would love that. And thank you so much, Karen, for having me on your show. I always enjoy your show, and it means a lot to me for you having me on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.